Buenos días y bienvenidos. Good morning and welcome. I'm the Reverend Katie Romano Griffin, your assistant minister.
And I am Dr. Henry Sagrishi, your director of music. Good to see you all.
It's a beautiful day at Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church, a liberal religious community where love works. Our mission is to explore the eternal, nurture community, and build a more just world. Together we dare to embody beloved community. Whether you're joining us in the sanctuary or connecting online, and I especially want to lift up our Reverend Abhi Janamanchi, who is with many of our fellow congregants in India for the next couple of weeks. Give them a wave right at that camera. Please know that whoever you are, wherever you're from, whomever you love, wherever you are on this life's journey, and whatever your gender identity, beliefs, or immigration status, you are welcome here.
If you are new to Cedar Lane, we have a small gift for you. Please raise your hand if you are comfortable doing so, and keep it raised for a moment so that our ushers can find you. Where are our newcomers? Yeah, way up in the back. Included with your gift is this beautiful brochure. You've got it right side up, Member Engagement Opportunities, that introduces you to Cedar Lane. As a liberal faith, what holds us together is our ability to connect deeply. The greatest gift that you can give us today is your presence and the ability to stay connected. So we invite you to fill in the information at the back of the form and place it in today's offering plate.
All are invited to stay after the service to enjoy coffee and conversation. If you choose to use a yellow mug, know that our friendly Cedar Laners will greet you, because at Cedar Lane, yellow means hello.
I'd like to draw your attention to the announcement page, which looks like this, and all of the upcoming events, and in particular on the right side of the front page, Cedar Lane 101, which is going to take place in about 2 weeks, Sunday, March 3rd, after the first service at 10:10, gives those who are new an opportunity to learn more about our faith and the Cedar Lane community. And speaking of our community, I am standing here because I want to make sure you all are aware of this fabulous concert coming up. You should receive a flyer, and I'd love for you to take it with you. You know the routine. Give it to a friend. Ask them to come with you next Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock to hear these marvelous musicians. My friend Karen Kelleher, who has been with us numerous times, both in the benefit concert orchestra, also playing here for services, and she actually led an ensemble during Christmas Eve when my daughter played second to her. So she's a great friend, and her pianist colleague Sonia Sabaya Sutton, they make beautiful music together, and in this case it's masterpieces, Brahms, Beethoven, an arrangement by Joseph Joachim, and for music by women in February, the music of Clara Schumann. So a wonderful concert. I hope you'll all come at 4 o'clock next Sunday afternoon. I look forward to seeing you there.
Excellent. Our lay pastoral visitors work closely with the ministers to support the pastoral ministry of this congregation. Today, excuse me, Helen Pakacek will be at the Joys and Sorrows candles throughout the service as well as after the service. We have a special guest preacher with us today. Many of you know him. The Reverend Graylan Scott Hagler is family around here. While Reverend Abhi has been away, he is one of the colleagues that's been on my speed dial. Reverend Hagler is the senior pastor at the historic Plymouth Congregational United Church of Christ in Washington, D.C. He's a living legend in activist communities and has been fighting for Black and Latino communities for decades. We're blessed to have him with us today, and I hope that you will please give Reverend Hagler a warm Cedar Lane welcome. I invite you to rise in body or spirit as we sing together hymn number 6, Just As Long As I Have Breath. The words will also be on the slides behind me.
please remain risen as Stephanie Williams comes forward to light the chalice and speak the words that are written in the order of our service. We kindle a flame of power, illuminating the holy in each of our faces. We recognize in the flame a passionate commitment to our shared faith. We are held and carried from day to day, week to week, in the shining of the light. This flame is mine as well as yours. We are brought together on this day, called to growth, to expansion within its glow. What does your heart know while beholding this holy fire?
You may be seated. Change of plans today. We have a different story for our Time for All Ages. It's Marisol McDonald and the Clash Bash. And it's by Monica Brown. Marisol has red hair and brown skin, and people try to put this Peruvian Scottish American in a box, but she won't choose one or the other, and she doesn't have to. My name is Marisol McDonald, and I don't match because I don't want to. I like being unique, different, and one of a kind. Me llamo Marisol McDonald, y yo no combino porque no quiero hacerlo. Me gusta ser original, diferente, y única. Next week I turn 8, which rhymes with great. I just know my birthday will be fabulous, marvelous, and divine. La semana que viene cumpliré 8, que rima con bizcocho. Sé que mi fiesta será fabulosa, estupenda y maravillosa. What do you want for your birthday? Gustavo asks. To see Abuelita, I say. I haven't seen Grandma for a long time, and I miss her so much. Sometimes our telephone connection breaks up, and I can't even hear her voice. But she's all the way in Peru, Gustavo says, and it's expensive to fly here, Dad says. I know that Abuelita will come, I say, even if she has to fly on a butterfly's back. Mommy just smiles. ¿Qué quieres para tu cumpleaños? Me pregunta Gustavo. Quiero ver a Abuelita, le contesto. No la he visto en mucho tiempo y la extraño muchísimo. A veces nuestra conexión telefónica no es muy buena y ni siquiera puedo oír su voz. Pero Abuelita está muy lejos en Perú, dice Gustavo. Y viajar desde allí es muy caro, dice Dad. Estoy segura que Abuelita vendrá a mi fiesta, les contesto. Aunque tenga que hacerlo volando sobre la espalda una mariposa. Mami solo sonríe. Will Abuelita come to my fiesta? I ask Mommy. Only this time she doesn't smile. Marisol, it isn't just the money, Mommy explains. It's hard to get papeles to come to the United States. Abuelita needs a special document called a visa to visit us. But sometimes it takes a long time for the visa to arrive. I don't understand. Why does Abuelita need papers to see her own family? I miss her so much. ¿Vendrá Abuelita a mi fiesta? Le pregunto a Mami. Esta vez ella no sonríe. Marisol, no es solo el dinero. Explícame a mí. Es difícil conseguir los papeles necesarios para venir a Estados Unidos. Abuelita, necesito un documento especial llamado visa para visitarnos. Y a veces Las visas demoran mucho en llegar. No comprendo. ¿Por qué necesita papeles, abuelita, para ver a su propia familia que la extraño tanto? On my birthday, Dad, Mommy, my brothers, and Kitty wake me up early. Happy birthday, they shout, and give me lots of hugs. Feliz cumpleaños. I can't wait for my party. I help Mommy decorate my cake, chocolate with green frosting, rainbow candles, and salty pretzels on top. El día de mi cumpleaños, Dad, Mommy, mis hermanos y mi niño me despiertan temprano. Happy birthday, exclaman todos y me dan muchos abrazos. ¡Feliz cumpleaños! Tengo muchas ganas de que comience mi fiesta. Ayudo a mami a decorar mi pastel de chocolate con escarcha verde y velitas de arco iris. Después lo cubro todo de pretzels salados. Finally, it's time. My friends start arriving. Emma is dressed like a princess. Tato is dressed like a soccer player. Noah is dressed like a unicorn. And Ollie is the friendliest pirate I've ever seen. What's going on, Marisol? My friends ask. Why don't our costumes match? Welcome to my Clash Bash birthday party, I say, and I spin around and show off my soccer player, pirate, princess, unicorn self. Al fin es la hora de mi fiesta y mis amigos comienzan a llegar. Emma está vestida de princesa. Tato está vestido de jugador de fútbol. Noah tiene un disfraz de unicornio y Ali es un pirata más simpático que he visto en mi vida. ¿Qué es usted, Marisol? Me preguntan mis amigos. ¿Por qué no combinan nuestros disfraces? Bienvenidos a mi fiesta de cumpleaños sin igual. Les contesto mientras giro para mostrarles mi traje de jugador de fútbol, pirata, princesa, unicornio. Later, I walk into the study, and there on the screen is Abuelita. Feliz cumpleaños, Marisol, she says, and we both laugh. I'm still waiting for my visa, but I used some of the money you sent to buy my very first computer and get an internet connection. Now we can talk and sing together, and I can see your pretty face all the time. Te quiero mucho, I tell Abuelita. I love you so much. Then I give the computer screen a great big abrazo. This is the best Clash Bash birthday party ever. Entro al estudio y allí, en la pantalla de la computadora, está Abuelita. Feliz cumpleaños, Marisol, dice ella. Y ambas nos reímos. Sigo esperando por mi visa, pero utilicé parte del dinero que me enviaste para comprar mi primera computadora y obtener una conexión de internet. Ahora podremos hablar y cantar juntas y podré ver tu cara bonito todo el tiempo. Te quiero mucho, le digo a Abuelita. I love you so much. Entonces me acerco a la computadora y le doy un super abrazo gigante. Este es el mejor y más único de todos mis cumpleaños. This month, throughout the entire month, we are inviting members to come forward and share what brought them to Cedar Lane, why they stay here, and what inspires them to give of their time, their talent, and their treasure. Speaking with us today is Stephanie Williams. Welcome, Stephanie.
Hello. Hey guys. So a couple of years ago, I was asked to come to the pulpit for that year's Capitol campaign, and I talked a lot about how the church was really supportive in some of the darkest times of my mental health, which included, unfortunately, a lot of suicidal ideation. And the support and love that the church gave me really helped me through that. And I don't want this to sound like the exact same story, because thankfully there's been a lot of changes since then. So in the time I have here, I want to focus a little bit more on how the church has changed, how I have changed, and how our relationship has changed. So Cedar Lane has always impressed me with the limitless love that it gives. It's very comforting, and in my last affirmation, I spent a lot of time talking about how helpful it was that when I came here, no matter how angry or sad, disheveled, and tired I was, I always received the exact same warm welcome. It was comforting, but also really confusing, because I would be coming, and sometimes I still do, with sweatpants and shirts with food stains and disheveled hair, like clearly have not taken care of myself very well, and I was bitter and angry and much too depressed to reciprocate, and people were still happy to see me. Even today, sometimes the hardest part of my mental health is not beating myself up for doing better. I'll slip into negative thought patterns, and I get mad at myself for not doing better and for not having improved as much as I thought I would. But this love that Cedar Lane has helped me to start work through it then, and it's helping me now as well to allow myself the patience to grow. And it extends to everyone, and we don't just say it, it shows in what we do. I knew and still know that no matter what I identify as, what I believe in, how miserable and happy I have been, Cedar Lane was and will be there for me. I'm loved and accepted not because I was or was not anything, not because I was a member here or even in the room. And that's one of my favorite changes in Cedar Lane the past couple of years, is including people outside of this building in our joys and sorrows, people that we don't know, people that we will never probably meet, and sending love their way and then following it up with action. I am not loved for anything specific. I am loved just for being. And through this love, I am able to keep growing. I have become more involved in the church these past few years, as I am sure some of you at least know. I am now currently at this moment a religious education teacher, the child care coordinator, and a worship associate, so I wear a lot of different hats. And I will not lie that in becoming more involved in the past couple of years, I've been less than enchanted with the internal politics that make a church run. I have become much more aware of the growing that Unitarian Universalists have to do as a whole with almost every branch of equality and justice. But we are growing, and sometimes more than others, that growing is hard. We are continually faced with violence, racism, sexism, homophobia, classism in the world, in our larger congregation, and even here. It's scary, depressing, and very oftentimes overwhelming, and we already do a pretty good job comparatively. But through it all, we never stop trying. People here are always trying to do better. We're trying to improve. We're reaching towards a better way to be, a better way to work together, and we may never get there, but the meaning is in the trying. And no matter how ugly this world has gotten, we have always looked towards the trying, towards the improving, towards a hopeful future of a better tomorrow. It reminds me of a famous prayer from Mother Teresa, which reads, "People are often unreasonable, irrational, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some unfaithful friends and some genuine enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and sincere, people may deceive you. Be honest and sincere anyway. What you spend years creating, others could destroy overnight. Create anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, some may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today will often be forgotten. Do good anyway. Give the best you have, and it will never be enough. Give your best anyway. In the final analysis, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. So no matter how the world has gotten ugly, how many times we have tried and failed, Cedar Lane keeps trying anyway, and that's why I love this church. Every time I hear something in the world that causes me anxiety, I can walk into this building and see in action us trying to improve it and trying to do better, and it gives me hope. It's helped me to know that it's okay if I slip up and become depressed to the point that I don't want to leave my bed that day, because it's just a practice that I am and we all are working on. We are all practicing and trying to do better. And the perfect end doesn't exist. There is no end goal in which we will all be nothing but holy, but we will all keep improving together, believing it is possible to be better, knowing that we will slip up, we will fail, there will be bloodied bruises and scars to show, and we will also know that we were loved and gave love every step of the way. I'll leave you with these words from Agatha Christie that have helped me a lot. I like living. I have sometimes been wildly, despairingly, acutely miserable, racked with sorrow, but through it all, I still know quite certainly that just to be alive is a grand thing. So thank you, Cedar Lane, for reminding me that it's all in the trying, and even when things are positively horrid, that I am loved just for being and to love living anyway. Thank you. Thank you.
So the last time we were here, it was Martin Luther King weekend. We had a cast of thousands. There were 9 of us. Today, not quite so many, but we are brave, and I tried to keep my alto voice up, so help out when I can.
Thank you, Stephanie, for your affirmation, and to the youth choir for the musical offering. Now, we gather each week not for our needs alone, but to bear witness to our joys and sorrows, triumphs and disappointments. In this sanctuary, we come together as companions on life's journey. When I hold up my arms, I invite you to say, we hold you in our hearts. If you are living through the small and extraordinary milestones of life, we hold you in our hearts. If parenting is your spiritual practice, we hold you in our hearts. If you are mourning a loss, we hold you in our hearts. If you live with or care for someone with grief or chronic pain, we hold you in our hearts. If you are struggling with illnesses seen and unseen, with mental illness or addictions, we hold you in our hearts. If you have suffered injustice or abuse, we hold you in our hearts. At Cedar Lane, Diane Wallenmeyer is in hospice, and we'd like to congratulate Carol and Edgar Berthaud for the birth of their grandson, Walter. At the same time, Phil Clausen, who is a longtime member of Cedar Lane, passed away, and he is survived by his widow, Roseanne. A service will be announced shortly, a memorial service. And our caring extends beyond Cedar Lane to others whose lives are lost or impacted by violence and calamities in our world. The families impacted by the recent shootings in Illinois, the many people in Venezuela dying of starvation and lack of good medical care, the miners whose whereabouts are unknown after a mine flooded in Zimbabwe. May these friends of ours, our companions in the world, and all that lives unspoken in our hearts be held in the embrace of prayer and by a love that will not let us go. Let's will remain seated and sing hymn number 1009 in the Till hymnal.
Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in,
breathe in and breathe out. The Greeks called the word for breath pneuma, the same word as spirit. So let us breathe spirit, fill with it, and share it. As we hold a moment of silence together with only our breath, I invite those of us who are mourning the loss of a loved one or the anniversary of a loss to rise in body or spirit as we hold the silence with our breath. Spirit of life and love, lift our prayers on the breeze. May they meet and tangle and hear the words of our ancestors and those we love whispering back to us the answers to our prayers on the wind. May all hearts be lifted and restored. Amen. And blessed be.
Good morning. I want to just give thanks for the hospitality of Reverend Katie Romano Griffin and all of the ways in which she has received me here this morning, and also just want to also give thanks for Sister Wagani, who also has just continued to share fellowship with me, and I just give thanks. And I just want to lift up Stephanie this morning, Stephanie Williams. Such a powerful and important testimony. And it is a testimony. I greet you. I bring greetings from Plymouth Congregational United Church of Christ in Washington, D.C. I've been the pastor there now for 27 years. And I imagine that maybe they'll carry me out feet first because I have no intentions of retiring or anything like that yet. Amen. And I want to also give greetings and thanks for Reverend Abi, my friend, my colleague, who we tend to work in a lot of issues together. Been locked up at least a couple times together. And we just thank you. I thank you for his witness, and I thank you for Cedar Lane's witness. Amen. As I get into what I want to talk about today, I want to lift up a reading from the 58th chapter of Isaiah. It's a very poetic reading. It's one of my favorite, and it clearly applies to where we are as a country and as a people. It says in that 58th chapter, verses 6 to 12, it says, "Is not this the fast that I choose? To loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to cover them and not to hide yourself from your own kin? Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up quickly. Your vindicator shall go before you. The glory of the Lord shall be your rear guard. Then you shall call, and the Lord will answer. You shall cry for help, and he will say, Here I am. If you remove the yoke from among you, the pointing of the finger, the speaking of evil, if you offer your food to the hungry and satisfy the needs of the afflicted, then your light shall rise in the darkness, and your gloom be like the noonday. The Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your needs in parched places and make your bones strong, and you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters never fail. Your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations. You shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to live in." We lift up those words to you. The word that sticks out there is repairers of the breach, and it has been one of the names of an organization affiliated with the Poor People's Campaign, of which Reverend William Barber is the senior lecturer. The organization and the movement is seeking to heal this country and to lead this country into addressing the needs of the poor, the vulnerable, and those on the margins. It is seeking through teaching, learning, and action to call people and the nation to an understanding of the interdependency that exists between people, communities, and the environment. The Poor People's Campaign seeks to heal the nation from its brokenness, its greed, and its self-centered focus that is manifest in xenophobia and not caring. Now, the con artist-in-chief in the White House declared as his delayed State of the Union address that the Union was strong. Nothing can be further from the truth. But we don't expect, do we, a pathological liar to be truthful? Because it would be totally out of character. Instead, we should expect a liar to lie. He has lied about the economics. He has lied about a crisis on the southern border. He has lied about immigrants. He has lied about Mexicans. He has lied about Muslims. He has lied about transsexual sisters and brothers. He has lied about black people. He has lied about his competence. He has lied even trying to take credit for the numbers of women recently elected to Congress. He is lying about Iran and Venezuela and the Russians. The current political agenda by this commander-in-thief is to create dissension, distraction, and illusion, all while the notions of democracy are eroded and stolen away. We are in a deep political, moral, and spiritual crisis in this nation and in this world. But we have been living a lie. We've been living a lie for a long, long time. And so because we were living a lie, people were shocked at how easily racism and white supremacy and white nationalism could reemerge. Many thought that the election of Obama signaled some radical and positive change for the nation. Instead, there was a white backlash that engaged in obstructionism, which was also practiced during Reconstruction after the Civil War, and then the Electoral College to reestablish the values of white supremacy and white nationalism. This occurred in 2016, and it occurred previously in 1876 with the contested presidential election of Tilden and Hayes. The removal of Union troops from the South put firmly back in place Jim Crow and allowed a reign of terror to hold on to the values of white nationalism. The same happened in 2016 as white nationalist tendencies reemerged and unapologetically racist policies were thrust into the public arena. There has been an increase of racial attacks through language and physically, and we have seen images on the southern border that conjures images of slavery as children are ripped from the arms of their parents. Now, I want to say that under Obama, many of us were lured into believing that the racially charged history of the nation had been dealt with and was a thing of the past. I want to assert today that racism and white supremacy is in the very DNA of the nation. In fact, it is at the marrow of our bones. Not only is white supremacy a part of the DNA of the nation, but our historical ignorance and our denial of that history. And I want to gloss over the ugliness of the history is a malaise in itself. How can we purge ourselves from the disease of racism if we refuse to see it, if we refuse to understand it, if we refuse, therefore, to deconstruct it and create a new ethos out of what we have discerned? We are more comfortable talking about class, and we are more comfortable talking about our days in the civil rights movement as if the issues that were faced in the past are not the same issues that we are facing today in 2019. Now, I could go through the litany of ailments, but we all know that litany, and I'm going to go through a few of them anyway. Mass incarceration, the income gap between blacks and whites and people of color, the failure of public education by design and sabotage, the characterization of beneficial programs as programs affecting blacks and people of color and therefore calling them entitlements. It is the blackening of issues and programs like Obamacare and welfare that brought these programs under attack and made to fail. There are more white people in the United States today who are poor, and yet the image of poverty and criminality is black, and resulting in draconian policies like the war on drugs that simply filled the jails with black, brown, and the poor. This is our disease. It is a disease of racism, and it feeds white supremacist policies. And it has been a disease that I have been battling all my life long. But it is a disease that we cannot conquer if we do not know its history or recognize its existence. And what I'm getting at is that there is a narrative that exists in America, a narrative that causes us not to look at the realities, not to understand the histories, a narrative that is often words that are played out. Like, for example, I would assert to you that I'm not African American. I don't call myself African American, and I almost dare anybody to call me African American. My people didn't arrive at Ellis Island. My people came through Sullivan's Island, which is off the coast of South Carolina, where my family was on the same plantation for 350 years. Right? We were bought and raped and sold. Families were split up. So basically to call myself African American is to negate a history that is my history. Now, I'm not ashamed of that history. In fact, I'm proud of that history. Why? Because I'm still here, keeping on, keeping on. When folks tried to destroy us, when folks tried to deny us, when folks tried to get rid of us, there was something that was a part of the fiber of our being that allowed us to rage on in spite of everything else that was going on around us. And therefore, by the power of my grandmother and by the power of my mother and the power of my great-grandmother, whatever her name is, because I don't know her name, I am still here by the grace and the power of tenacity. And somebody prayed for me somewhere along the way. You know, to talk about the narrative, folks get us to buy into something that is really not the reality. It's really not the truth. Because if I can get you to buy into something that is not the truth, then I can get you to go for anything. If you fail to look at the ugliness of the nation, if you fail to look at the ugly history that exists in the nation, but instead really believe in the myth and all of the pomp and circumstance that folks try to throw at us, and we sing that tune without being critically analytical about what is going on, we will never heal the nation from its racism and from its white supremacy. Just think about it. All of the textbooks in school that will gloss over slavery, that will never talk about the economics of slavery, that will never talk about the length of slavery, that will never talk about the desperation of slavery, that will never talk about the American empire being built on the backs of slaves and cotton pickers. You know, the fact is we've gone past that. 1619. Here we are, 2019. 1619. A ship sails up into the Jamestown colony. And that is when slavery is officially introduced into the Americas. 1690, 400 years ago. And we barely understand what that means in terms of people being a commodity for all of that time. And what it meant for the nation to have that commodity. The Louisiana Purchase. Y'all know that, right? Everybody knows the Louisiana Purchase, right? What did the Louisiana Purchase accomplish? More slave territory for more slaveholders. More production of cotton, and therefore to fuel the economic engine that made America as strong as it. In fact, you know, many of us, we lived through the mortgage meltdown, right? Right, where basically banks and wrote mortgages to people that they knew could not pay back those mortgages, and they took and they bundled those junk mortgages into paper and sold it onto Wall Street and sold it to financial markets around the world. Well, I got news for you. That is what was going on as the Louisiana Purchase came online. Folks were able to buy land and slaves based on no money down credit that was basically then securitized and sold to Wall Street and sold to London and sold to Paris, wherever there were financial markets. And then when cotton collapsed, the creditors came to look for repayment. And how does repayment happen? Families are broken up all over again. Resold, repackaged, children ripped out of the arms of their mothers. The Alamo, y'all know the Alamo, right? Y'all remember the Alamo? John Wayne at the Alamo, Davy Crockett at the Alamo, Jim Bowie at the Alamo. What were they doing at the Alamo? Well, Jim Bowie and Davy Crockett, they were working as consultants for plantations to look at expanding slave territory into Texas. Santa Anna caught wind. Santa Anna outlawed slavery. Santa Anna outlawed indentured servitude. They brought their indentured servitude and slaves anyway. That was the Alamo. The Alamo was a battle over slavery. again to expand. The Indian Removal Act, Andrew Jackson. I'm just giving you a little history here so that we understand what the history. Andrew Jackson stood up and basically said, we got a crisis on the southern border. Y'all hear me? Because Florida belonged to Spain. And what was going on is that slaves were escaping over the border into Florida and merging in with Seminole tribes and getting free. And so therefore Andrew Jackson said we got a crisis on the southern border. It was a crisis of slavery. And therefore they started running skirmishes into Florida until they destabilized Florida to such a degree that Spain sold to the United States. All of these things I'm getting at is really a part of the ugly history that exists in the United States. The ugly racist history, the ugly white supremacist history, this Indian Removal Act. To remove the Trail of Tears, right? To make room for more plantations on what was once indigenous people's land. So to practice genocide against one people so that you can practice genocide against another people. And the economic interests just continue to roll and continue to expand. That's American history. Y'all heard of, how many heard of Red Summer? Red Summer. Anybody? Red Summer were attacks that took place all across this country in the year 1919 against black communities, where black communities were burnt out, where thousands of people were lynched, beaten, entire communities destroyed because of the fear that the Bolshevik Revolution had happened in Russia. And folks felt that fertile ground would be among black folks because they were so discontent with the racism in America, and that they must further destabilize those black communities in order to protect the country from the Reds. And so the blood flowed in the street. Even had a white racial uprising in Washington, D.C., Baltimore, New York. In fact, the military was called out in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and bombed the black community. The history. Did you read that in the textbook? You know, I thought I had missed something in school. Right? I thought I had missed something in school because no one really wants to talk about it. So how do you deal with racism if you don't talk about these kinds of issues that is upon the body of the nation? How do you begin to reconstruct and understand what racism is? How do you begin, in a sense, to get a handle on where the nation is? And if you don't get a handle on where the nation is, therefore, you can have a segment of people jump up and say, let's make America great again. Because you don't understand the history. But one thing I do have to say as I come here to Cedar Lane, and you know, part of this is that this is this driving force within me. That's why I preach on this subject, right? Because it is a part of my own DNA. It's a part of my own creation that I got to talk about it, that I got to teach people about it, where we are as a nation, that I got to get my community to understand where we are as a nation, why we are in this predicament. It's not because we are incompetent. It's not because we are weak. It's not because we are inferior, but there is a whole historical process that has denied people deliberately equality. And to understand that racism in America is mimicked by racism that exists in other places in the world, such as our battle against South Africa during the apartheid movement was just like Jim Crow in the United States. Or Representative Omar's recent comment that everybody labeled as anti-Semitic. I went and I tried to look at it hard and see what was anti-Semitic in it. There was nothing that was anti-Semitic in her comments. And then I began to understand that from the 1836 up to 1840, there was one rule after another passed in Congress that was a gag rule that forbidded anybody in the halls of Congress to talk at all about slavery. You couldn't debate it. You couldn't put it on the floor. You couldn't deal with anything around slavery. And so here you are right now today with another implicit gag order that exists in the Congress of the United States. And yet there is an apartheid system that exists in Palestine by the Israelis. And we need to speak out about racism there as well as racism at home. You can't escape it. You can't pick and choose. You can't say, I'm going to deal with racism here, but avoid dealing with racism here, because the fact is, it's all the same thing. It's all the same paradigm that has been practiced, manipulated, and perfected over and over again. But you know, one of the things as we deal with healing all of this, I got to say, Cedar Lane, you are a part of the healing process. You are part of the healing process. Why? Because I know the issues that you deal with all the time. I know the things that you're concerned with all the time. I'm just so thankful, for example, that instead of just talking about what's happening in terms of the immigration issue, you stepped up and became a sanctuary church. You know, that is something that everybody needs to take notice of. That instead of just talking a good game, you out there trying to do something and to make a difference in the world. This is how we begin to heal the world from the racism that exists, is begin to stand up and say, no, we count. No, my voice counts. The thing that I am dealing with is that folks, first of all, need to see in order to heal the hurt. Need to see with their own eyes. I recently, not too long ago, took a group of pastors to Palestine. And I took deliberately Christian Zionist pastors to Palestine. And I didn't brief them, didn't tell them to read anything, right? And I'm friends sometimes with fundamentalists, y'all. That's a joke, but anyway. But I have my friends come with me, my friends who I have deep historical, theological disagreements with. I said, come on with me, come on with me, come on with me. And so one of my preachers, when we arrived, they were greeted, said, welcome to my country. And because this guy is a Christian Zionist, he thought he was greeted by Israelis. And he went under that impression for 48 hours until he heard the girls talking and realized that the women were not talking as Israelis, but they were talking as Palestinians. And then he had come from Beaumont, Texas, and had seen Jim Crow. And it took about 72 hours before he began to realize that what he was looking at and witnessing is what he thought he had left behind in Beaumont, Texas years ago. To stepping off the sidewalk because somebody is passing. And as he said, when he came back, somebody tried to challenge him as he did a report back on what he had seen. And I'll never forget his comments. His comment was this. He says, are you trying to tell me that I didn't see what I saw? And that's our point here in terms of deconstructing the history, is to see it, to understand it, to know where we are, to know who we are, to know what we really are, to not stand up every single time just singing God Bless America or the Star Spangled Banner. But yes, Kaepernick needed to take his knee, and I congratulate him on that and over again, because I will not sing that song and I will not have a flag in my church. I am not someone that is going to wrap myself in the flag, because I'm wrapping myself in a spirit of justice and liberation, just like you are. And one thing I know is the healing comes out of this, being able to share the hope together, being able to go on the journey together, being able to go to jail with your pastor in order to stand up for something, to stand up for justice. Because the thing is folk want to keep us separate, and we are able to be kept separate if we don't understand the history. But when we understand the history, then we come together. We look at all the history that tried to separate poor white folks from poor black folks deliberately, and then codify that and to make sure that people could remain separate. That is to keep us from being advocates with one another. But my destiny is a part of your destiny, and your destiny is a part of my destiny. And sisters and brothers, we need to stand up together, because none of us represent the 1%, and we need to stand up and be the people of conscience, goodwill, and justice. That's why I lifted up Isaiah. Isaiah says, is not this the fast that I choose, to loose the bonds of the oppressed? Is not this to take the homeless into your home, to feed the hungry with the bread off of your? This is the proper worship. This is the proper spirituality, is to stand in solidarity with those who are going through trouble, circumstance, trials, and tribulations. We're called to be the people of conscience, goodwill, and we're called to speak the truth. The nation doesn't like to hear the truth. And you know, that person in the White House, he wouldn't know what truth is if it hit him upside the head. But our issue is to organize and to lift up a movement that understands the history of this nation, because you can't correct something if you haven't analyzed it, deconstructed it, and then out of that create a new ethos. We can heal this nation. It is up to us what this nation becomes. We need to be the people of conscience, faithfulness, and spirituality that looks further than a politics of right and left. I could care less about a politics of left or right. I care about what is right and what is just and what is hopeful, and whether every living soul is seen as the divine creature that they are. Continue to stand, Cedar Lane. Continue to stand up and speak truth. Continue to pray up. Continue to move forth spiritually and bring some change here in this city, in this region, in this world. God bless you.
And this is why I introduced him as our guest preacher. Whew, Spirit descended. Let us enter this time of giving, grateful for the charge that we have been given. I invite you to give generously to this congregation, which does work within our walls and beyond these walls to create a more just world. Today's offering will now be gratefully received.
We receive the offering with the words of Lynn Unger. By the work of our hands and the work of our hearts, our love is made real. May we be grateful for all that is given and grateful for all that is shared.
As I invite you to rise in body or spirit to sing our final hymn, I invite you to sing the words like you mean it. Spirit of life and love, continue to guide our feet. Spirit of life, beating our hearts, may they beat with hope and may they move us towards justice. Go forth to depart and serve. Amen. And blessed be.
Guide my feet while I run this race. Guide my feet while I run this race. Guide my feet while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain. Hold my hand, hold my hand while I run this race. Hold my hand, hold my hand while I run this race. Hold my hand while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain. Search by me while I run this race. Stand by me, still I win this race. Stand by me while I run this race, for I don't want to run this race alone. Search my heart while I run this race. Search my heart while I run this race. Search my heart while I run this race, for I don't want to run this race in vain. Race in vain. Got to fix my contacts. Thank you.